Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of My Stoic Circus. Also, sound off, tune in. And I'm doing a combo record on YouTube and X, Clubhouse, all that great stuff. Today, we're going to talk about what should you be thinking about before you take action. That's right. Maybe having some pre-thought for every decision or many of the big decisions that you're going to make before you take action. That's right. Have you kind of like stuck your foot in your mouth, or maybe you overstepped? Maybe just delaying just a little bit might help a lot. But how do we get to that point? And what practices should we put in practice? And that's what we're going to talk about today on My Stoic Circus, as well as Sound Off, Tune In, and we'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome on in. And today we're going to talk about the right actions to take. It's Tuesday, it's the day after Memorial Day. And one of the important things that, a lot of us are getting acclimated. We're back into our normal lives. We're off a little bit of a hiatus. Maybe you had a great, relaxing weekend, or you had time at home to work on the things that you needed to do for yourself. And with that being said, now you've got to shift right back in here. Are you preset? Are you set to go? All that good stuff. Or maybe you're not, and you're still just catching up on what is going to take place next. And a lot of the decisions that you have to make, the quandaries, the dilemmas, all that great stuff, it really comes down to having a game plan for yourself for in the moment, right? And I just had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine over this weekend, and he talked about how can you use stoicism, bro? I don't even see you put it into play. And I said, "Well, really? Okay, let's talk about it." And what can you say that you know? What do you know about stoicism? Oh, I just hear that these guys are like they're not easily rocked, and they're not easily they don't have very much emotion. And I said, oh, well, interesting. Because in the end, stoicism is more about how we deliver on our emotions and how we get our emotions to deliver for us, because we're human. We're integrated into a lots of parts of the different world of life. And that means there is a spiritual sense, there's an energy flow sense, there is a physical sense. And then there's the metaphysical that touches on everything else in your facets of life. But when I think about all this, and when I think about what is going to get me in the next best position, because I haven't recorded live on YouTube and I don't know how long. It's just been a while. And the reason why I took that time is because before I went on air, I wanted to go into the design factor of taking this experience, Jason Barajas, not 72 the architect, Jason Barajas, into a deliverable, packageable thing that people know who I am and what I'm here to do. Right. So that was like the first thing that I want to do, get clear on my message. And I've created 3 different podcasts. One is Sound Off Tuning, which touches on pretty much almost any subject matter. The other is Man to Man Voices and Stories, where we touch on stories of men's success, failures, and their integration of all of it that makes their story where they're at. And then the last but not least, My Stoic Circus, which touches on stoicism and practical application of everyday life. And so that's what we're here to talk about today, right? So when I was reading My Stoic Circus, or not My Stoics, My Daily Stoic, which is by Ryan Holiday, and I've read this thing for going on 3 years, maybe 4 years. Um, my book is tattered, and I train on those thoughts. That what he would think that there was probably something you should think about in the month of May. We're coming to a close, right? And today he asked this question. He said, and I framed it differently. He says, what should I think about before I take action? Now, on May 28th, he goes and quotes Marcus Aurelius, and he says he's putting you in the right framework of mind. Like, think about being a Roman emperor and how much you got to take, right? So he goes, the first thing to do is don't get worked up. right? So situations happening to you. For everything happens according to the nature of all things, and in short time you'll be nobody and nowhere. Even as great emperors, Hadrian and Augustus are now. The next thing to do is consider carefully the task at hand for what it is, while remembering that your purpose to be a good human being. Get straight to doing what nature requires of you. Speak as you see most just and fitting, with kindness, modesty, and sincerity. Right? It's a very important thing that we know what's actually in the measure of our own hands before it is in somebody else. Say, like, you go to work every day and you're thinking about, well, what is it that I'm going to really do today that's going to make a difference? What's really going to get me ahead? Right? Many of us don't think about that until it's already happening. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. There are many things that are happening, and sometimes the deadlines, the rushes, the quotes, the questions, where are you at with that project? Or maybe you're not working as fast paced as you need to be. But it's like, well, what's in my nature? Right. And that's what Marcus was really touching on. He's like, what is in the sphere of your actual influence? And what's not. What do you control, what you don't? And the more that I thought about it, and I was like, okay, I've been facing some personal issues. One particular issue, there is a change in the dynamic of my family. For a couple years, I've been dealing with parental alienation. Now, due to circumstances of unfortunate events, there is a significant change where now I get to put what was removed out of my life and back into my life. And how am I going to appreciate, and what actions can I take to encourage and nurture what's going to be in my responsible hands, right? Same goes for business. And I've had friends who've told me, like, you know what, Jason, it's easy for you to say all this smart stuff, right? And I'm like, yeah, granted, it's not just about being smart. Smart is an action that you really put into the flow of what you do, right? It doesn't mean that you're the most amazing person. It doesn't mean that you have your hand on the pulse of everything at all times. It means that you're going to be able to be adaptable as the circumstances unfold, which is very important. If you really think about how the circumstances are laid out for you, maybe before you feel that a little bit of adrenaline, maybe you feel a little bit of a rush, you get that nervous gut feeling, or you've got a headache, like, I don't have the answers. How do we tell the people that we're responsible for and responsible to, that maybe we don't have the actual actionable answers? And that's the key. And as I was looking at what is the key, I started thinking about, well, what is really triggering me to feel this way? I don't like feeling like I don't know, right? And so then you take that moment, aha, I don't have the answer, but what do I have? Number one, so to solve this problem, whatever you're doing, maybe it's the kids, maybe it's business, maybe it's whatever it is, maybe it's a friendship or a relationship. How do I solve this problem? The first thing that I would tell you is, and I just started doing this recently, I would get a simple notepad, right? The first way to attack your obstacle or your problem is how you frame it, right? So the way that you frame it is, write the question down, write a question statement, your thought, the problem, right? Let's just say, I went through parental alienation, and now how do I want to receive, let's just say, my child, my teenager, whatever. How am I going to put her right back into my life where I've been removed, as an example? So write that down. The more that you write something concretely down, now you actually have a physical thing that says, I see this problem, not where your mind is going to float out. Right? So you're being triggered to be, this is internally bothering you. This is something that you're resonating with. So when you look at these things, knowing what the problem is to being an obstacle. And that's where I would tell you, if you've never really looked at life as a series of obstacles versus a series of problems, it's the difference between being stuck and something to be accomplished. So that brings up number two. Now that I've written it down and I'm aware, where do I feel uncomfortable? Now I understand there's something to be achieved. And the more that I write down my process, even just a bullet point, like, okay, here's what I need to do. I need to file this court document and I need to do that. Okay, fine. That's maybe a legality side, right? But what if it's something more practical? Maybe you've had a difficult time in relationships with colleagues and friends. You never feel like you're understood. Every time you talk, you're interrupted. Trust me, that's one of the areas that I get really pissed at. I really get upset. And I ask myself, okay, well, if I'm getting upset when I'm interrupted, then are the company that I keep really listening to me? And are they the company that I want to keep going forward? It's like that phrase I heard from a friend a while back. He said, "Why are you watering dead flowers?" And that made a huge, tremendous difference when you think about, your actual obstacles. When you think about, well, you know what, Jason, I can really evaluate the company that I keep by evaluating the actions I take with that company. So you wrote the problem down. You're listening to your internal voice. You've listed some of the issues. Now you're looking at the people that you're speaking to, and we're talking about your community of people that you're dealing with, right? And when you're looking at this, now you're saying, okay, well, maybe I'm feeding more of them than they're feeding me, but that's okay because you know what? Our stuff that we get to live with, we share on a constant basis is like we give and take, right? And to get out of that, what we call a victim mode mentality, that's right. Victim mode mentality means, why is this always happening to me? Why did this person always they always seem go happy go lucky? It just seems to, it's easier said than done for them. So here's the key about that, ladies and gentlemen. The key is always that it's easier said than done. But if you say it, then therefore it should be for something you either get behind or you're not. If you're saying it out your mouth, as the Stoics would say, then are you the keeper of the word or somebody else? Do you keep your word to yourself? And the more that you practice keeping your word to yourself, you take on the next objective. You understand what you're capable of doing right here and right now. So, say, like, it's an issue where, let's say, a colleague at work is just really getting in the way and you used to be so close, but now you guys see a difference of eye to eye, right? Now you can really say, well, you know what? Let me actually go and listen to what they actually are saying versus letting my mind infect the situation. Maybe you are right, but the way that you frame your words next to that person is going to make a huge, tremendous deal, right? So when you understand what this means and it takes place right in front of your eyes, oh, I now control me, right? I still have feelings. I still don't like what's being said, but let's look at this objectively and subjectively all at once. If I give them no reaction and I'm listening, I'm curious to know what is really the problem in your eyes. Okay. And ask them questions. Now, when they've given you their spiel, whatever they're saying, invite them. You know, you said a few things that really kind of sound off in my head. So I've got, you know, some things to adjust at. Would you be interested? Ask them if they're interested. And if you're interested, you can say politely, hear me out. You might object to some things I'm going to say, but at least we can look at what can be done and so that we can go further along down the issue and make the objective where we can find places to accept each other. And there's times where you're not going to be able to accept. That's the other part. I've seen so many books, self-help books that have literally gotten to the point where they talk about acceptance because the power of acceptance is much more important than the power of persuading. Because when you accept things, you can't be attack of what you accept. And if people try to, that's their own personal agenda. They are the ones that have the issue. You don't. And so when my friend was talking to me earlier about, oh, well, stoicism is not that, it's not all that cracked up what it, I just not, it's easier said than done. I'm like, oh, but this takes practice. You think that I've been practicing stoicism for like 1 year, 2 years? No, I've been practicing it for quite some time. And I don't have all the lessons down. I allow myself to understand what I don't know and be curious to find out the answers. And if I'm actually have the ability to be able to find out the answers, maybe I'm just not qualified, and that's the significant difference. So, what should you think about before you take action is a very critical question. If you can ask that in the moment where the height of your emotions are so high and you're looking at the game plan, well, how do I adjust this? This person's yelling at me. They're really angry. Or maybe this person's really sad and they're coming to me at a time that I'm not available to really attend to them. This is where building your manners really matters. Being polite, like something, I was talking to another thought leader and a mentor of mine. He was saying most really good leaders, and he said most, which I kind of was like, okay, can you prove this? Is that it's most? He said, most good leaders, whenever they're meeting with people and it's like an escalated event, he says, I slow the problem down, the conversation down. I'm trying to listen to you, everything that you have to say, but I'm going to provide questions so that we can slow down. And that really points at the key factor of what should you think about before you take action. If you slow things down, unless it's a life or death situation, now you have the framework to go back to what I was saying, write the problem down, check your emotions, because your emotions can put you in a rush situation that it might not feel so great. It won't. It doesn't always feel that great. But if you take the time and slow it down, then all the factors that are outside of you can't escalate your emotional frailty. They can't escalate your thought process because they're asking for permission, right? And this is where that big word that comes into play, no, really has its weight. And just like James Clear would say, he said in an interview, I think it was between him and maybe Gary Vee or someone else. I forget no, it was Ryan Holiday, matter of fact. He was saying that James Clear was saying, no is a decision, yes is an obligation. Know the boundaries of all the decisions that you actually make. So when you think about what should you think about before you take action, if the next few steps, if I react to whatever it is right now, what are the more likely results that I can anticipate or predict? Foreseeability, as they would say in the law. Maybe you might have the range that you don't understand, but when the heat of the moment, your feelings are like they're skyrocketed up and it seems like it's out of control. By slowing the thing down and stating the problem before you, the leader in you slows the situation down. You find the value because the minute you get out of control, the minute you initially react, like say, like, maybe it's a driver who cuts you off, or maybe it's someone in your family who's really pissed you off. If you get into that animalistic and savage style mindset, right? You let that beast out. There is consequences for getting emotionally out of control. But there's not always time where we're in control. There's some things that just affect us so deeply. And when is it excusable? That's where really getting stoicism, so to speak, getting to work for you. And you're not always going to have it in check, but you can be armed with it. You can have it as a defense and offense. Like, oh, that's interesting. You know what? Let me slow this down. I need time to think about this. I don't fully understand the problem. And there are people around you who will say, well, how can you not? How can you not understand what's going on? It really comes down to really thinking about the situation at hand. And I can't tell you how many times I've rushed off, gave an opinion about something, or maybe even politics or somebody else's problem, and I never handled the problem. And there's many of us that do this. But if we slow down, say, you know what, I don't have the answers right now. Maybe if I slow it down, I can find the answers clearly, not just for myself, but for you or for whatever you're working with. So when you go about today, all right, here's what the Stoics would say. And Ryan Holiday would say, he said it very clearly. First, don't get upset because that will color your decision negatively and make it harder than it needs to be, right? You might be adding the color and the texture because of the anger and where you're upset and where you're triggered, right? That's the external coming into the internal, right? He says, the second, remember, right? Hold on, put the screen back up. Okay, there we go. I don't know why my screen switched. But because second, remember that the purpose and principle you have to value most. Running potential actions through this filter will eliminate bad choices and highlight the right ones. Ooh, that is a big one, if I must say. So maybe your previous experience of what you've gone through could actually aid you, and you've got to be able to enact those decisions pretty quickly sometimes. And sometimes, look, the more time you take, the more the situation is diffused and it stops you from maybe even purchasing or committing to something that is just way beyond your plate. Because many times, many of us, we take on more than what we can chew because what we're chewing on is not I'd say a rush enough or an energy enough, but we know by completing what we already have, we now know the sense of completion. When we know a sense of completion and we understand, you know what, let me go accomplish cleaning up my house. I know that the store, if I don't go to the store right now, maybe if I don't get the beef right now, dinner won't be till 8 o'clock. So be it. But by ranging the decisions that you make and slowing it down enough could be the defining factor the where you get out of control and you're like, "Oh, damn, how did I get to this place again? I keep doing this." Your wish is my command, as they would say in laws of attraction. You say it, you profess it, it will come to be. But just like in the laws of attraction, they do say there is a slight delay. There is a small delay from when the action bounces at the thing, engages, and puts it right back into play. And then what you asked for is what you receive, right? So that's a critical point about acceptance. So and then there's um you know that the last thing is, just to review, don't get upset. You can do the right things by making the right choices, by understanding what is at your doorstep or on your plate. And that's it. When you think about how you can just delay things just a little bit and frame the problem and whatever it may be, you might give yourself the grace and space that you actually need to be able to make the right decision. Making decisions on relationships, making decisions on business, where your best opportunities are, comes from a place where you can frame it the best way you can, not where you can't. And it means that, if you want to clean up any mess or any objective or any problem, you don't start at the end. You look at the end and keep that in mind. You work backwards in a way in your mind, like, look, as things unfold, it's getting to this outcome that I want and that I need for me, because that's a sign of maturity. But while you're going, you don't just start like, well, I'm going to start on this thing and then I'm hoping to reach this end. But if you're never thought about what the end looks like, you're kind of like wading through water that may have treacherous currents and could take you under. So framing yourself in the best way possible means that you're taking the time for yourself, no matter what the circumstances are. The only exceptions are is if it's a life and death situation, And speaking about that, this weekend I heard about a few unfortunate drownings um, over Memorial Day weekend, and it happens every single year. But my question is, Do people realize safety going into a treacherous situation where they want to have luxury? They want to relax, go camping by the river, the lake, the ocean. What are my simple reminders? Here's my simple ones. Number one, never turn your back on the ocean. Even in knee deep water, it can be very treacherous. You can be pulled out to sea in a heartbeat, right? Number two, any river right now, many of our winter waters are at becoming at their peak. That's right. And their temperature. Don't just jump into a river without a life jacket. Get your foot in the water and see, well, maybe this is not a thing where I get myself into a water. All right. People jumped in the water and even lakes. That's right. Where there's may not be some heavy currents, you still have to deal with temperature. Your body lowers pretty rapidly once you're immersed in water. So are these things, after Memorial Day's over with? Yeah, it's still worth it. So take some time, think about what this all means to you. Now, that's just water safety. What about, you know, somebody I admire on social media was saying that she was choking this weekend. She had some food lodged in her throat. There was this device, the anti-choking device that helped. I've seen it time and time again, and I ordered it through Amazon. And this device is great to have with you at all times, or even a first aid kit. Like these are just like cautionary things, but it's like be able to make those life and death decisions is because you have the experience, the knowledge that you can engage it when you need it. So, yeah. But anyhow, that's today's show, and that's also talking about what should you do or what should you think about before taking the action. Taking these actions will be able to set your consequences up for you as best as possible. Not everything, but at least it's better to be in a safe space, in a consistent space that you can really handle. Well, that's all the time that I have for Sound Off Tune In. Also, my Stoic Circus website's going up pretty soon. Man to Man's coming up pretty soon. Setting up the Discord. So I'll be able to set up the communities where we can have chat discussions and post my YouTubes and build a community. I would love for you to join. So go over and like and share on the YouTube as well as X. And if you're on Clubhouse, share it with your friends. These recordings are available to you. So that's pretty much it, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope you all have a great Tuesday going forward, and we'll see you all next time. All right, y'all take care.